you'd each pick a tall building project that you most admire, and then an element of it that you think should be applied elsewhere, emulated more widely, or pick an element of it that you would change and improve upon.
Well, there are a lot of nice tall buildings in the world, but I think everywhere in the world, and what is very important is it's not only about the tower, but it's about the public space. It's the connection with the city. I think the community has to accept it. And what's very important for a tall building is that it's not just an object, but it's becoming part of the identity of the city. And you have to respect the setting, try to make connections with the rest of the city.
Is there a building that is a public icon like that that also engages the public space, as you mentioned earlier?
Usually when we do a lot of a project, and it's everyone, then there is the feeling, well, it is there, and it's very clear that it is there for years, and it's part of the city, and it's part of the life. It's all about the functions of the ground floor, the first floor. It's not only the public space and the urban scheme, but it's just what's happening outside the building, but also inside the building, and what the building is doing with the other buildings around.
Yeah, I must say it is always very difficult to say that one building is your favorite building. I mean, people also ask me quite often, what is the most favorite building you did yourself, which is for me very difficult to answer. But you know, the inspiration behind the Rotterdam as a concept comes very much from more Asian areas. And especially when you look at towers in Hong Kong, you know, there is just a much more requirement for densities. And what is interesting in cities like in Hong Kong, that towers have public connections on different levels, and they are bound into the city and really become part of the city, and therefore also part of the interaction between people.
Let's talk about the De Rotterdam building. So in connecting these mixed-use towers, you know, beyond just shared mezzanines or sky bridges or something, which you do see more commonly. What specifically have you learned from that building about creating what might be called a vertical community?
Yeah, well, what is of course interesting about the Rotterdam is actually it's a compilation of towers that you place together very closely. So basically what you normally do in a low-rise city where buildings are very close to each other with different functions is now basically translated into a high-rise building. And it gives very interesting effects because when you're on height, your neighbor is actually quite close by. And normally when a tower is like a needle and you look out, but everybody has the same view all around. And I think what is interesting for me about this building is that tenants see each other on different heights and also different tenants. And you feel that actually now, because the building is now fully occupied, and you really feel that because of that, so not only the physical connections, but also, let's say, view connections, create a community in that building, and that is quite special to see. It's better than you hoped it would be.
No, I think that's an interesting point because it really is about creating a community.
Yeah.
And it's the largest building in the Netherlands, right? But it doesn't look or feel monolithic or imposing.
No.
So how do you make a community like that and connect, you know, towers side by side without making the whole thing overwhelming?
I can tell you, I think we spent a year, maybe 1.5 years together in looking really carefully at all the composition of the blocks and the small changes you have to do to really make this to work, to still give everybody a view, to still, you know, have enough daylight in all the tenants, etc. And we had tables full of models with you know, slide lifts, moving the functions around in the building, etc. It was not a short process.
Was there one challenge in particular that had an interesting solution?
Now, what was challenging is, of course, how close can you bring these blocks together? You know, that was a big discussion because we have, of course, these vertical atriums between the blocks. But at the end of the day, these slots are only 6 meters wide, and of course, it was a discussion, and also it is difficult to imagine, you as an architect, you imagine a lot of things, but still some things need to also be tested in reality. So the distance between the blocks is quite minimum, And the question was, of course, will this really work?
So what's the advantage of having these spaces shared and not just for
No, you
parallel
can,
towers?
you can easily use the facilities, like restaurants, pubs, fitness, conference rooms for the office tenants. And yeah, it's you cannot do that everywhere. It must be the best site in the big cities.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the site in Rotterdam is that beautiful, with a phenomenal view to the bridge and to the rest of the city, along the water, the River Maas. And then you feel the theater, the new theater is nearby. There are a lot of restaurants already. There are a lot of apartments and other offices. So you feel that you can make a real mixed use, multifunctional building, and the flexibility was a very important target in the design scheme.
It has different functions with peaks on different times of the day and the evening. The building is always alive, and that is quite special. This brings a lot of energy into the city.
Is there any challenge, particular to the development aspect, that this, are there kinds of tenants that don't like that, or is that counterbalanced by, the advantages of sharing?
The tenants
space?
has to believe in the concept of a vertical city. So of course there are also tenants who want to have their own block, their own building.
And I can tell you, most tenants just compare to what they know.
Right.
It's always difficult for architects, and I think that is the biggest struggle we have. Most tenants, most investors, they think, what is this? We never did this before. It becomes a risk. We managed to convince most tenants, but I also must say, since the building is finished, people are really convinced. Because people see it in real life, and they see in real life that it works.
And meanwhile, in the first year, we did create a lot of activities in the atrium, like exhibitions and all kinds of things, just to attract people, to bring in the people, and to show them around what's happening in Rotterdam, what are the opportunities. And that takes a couple of months, and then it's becoming part of the city.